concept of resilient-based living, of living life on the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual planes of existence. And when I retired back in 2012, what the Army saw was a major that they were retiring at 31 years old that was a Ranger, had achieved the rank of major, a couple master's degrees, so why do we need to give him anything for his transition? Well, the civilian world had no idea the hurricane that they were about ready to unleash on them. But it's really inspiring for me to see that you guys have this opportunity, because it took me legitimately about 5 or 6 years to figure out my transition. But part of that transition has been working with athletes like Lucas, and if you guys had a chance to look at his bio, his official bio, he talks about that the only reason that he's doing stuff like this is to be able to use it as a platform to help others down the road. And so literally that is his inspiration for snowboarding. And I got an opportunity for 2 hours this morning to watch him at the VA, integrating with veterans, all the way from OEF, OIF like us, all the way to World War II veterans. There were 2 out of the 4 surviving World War II veterans were in the VA today to meet Lucas. And I'll tell you what, that was absolutely an honor for me to meet them and to make that introduction for him. So how we're going to do this, I'm going to give Lucas a brief opportunity to just introduce himself, tell what he does. You guys have saw the video and whatnot, and then we're going to kind of do this as like a Q&A between him and I for about 20 minutes, and then open it up to you guys for the final 15 to 20 minutes to ask Lucas some questions. And then afterwards, we've got some pictures of him about 35 feet up in the air doing a trick that he'd be more than glad to sign, and you guys can ask him individual questions as well. So with that, I introduce you to one of my heroes, Lucas Foster.
Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate that. My name's Lucas Foster. I'm 19 years old, and I was born and raised in Telluride, Colorado. And if you guys have not been to Telluride, it is a mountain town, deep in southwest Colorado. So I was growing up right next to a ski area, tons of snow, and I got on my snowboard when I was about 8 years old from my father, Steve Foster. He was, a pioneer snowboarder, and he taught me early on how to link turns together. And then as I developed as a rider and as a person, I kind of broke off and started doing my own thing, which was the half pipe and jumping and doing contests. And now I'm on the U.S. team for half pipe and just going season by season, competing for the country, putting my heart and soul into it, going for the next Olympics. And yeah, it's an honor to be here speaking with all you guys. You guys are huge inspirations to us U.S. athletes, and we hope we can be inspirations to you guys too. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, Lucas, first question, we talked about this a little bit last night, and you kind of touched on it a little bit in your introduction, but what does it mean for you personally to be able to come out here to Colorado Springs, which is literally, I think, the 3rd largest military county in the country, to come out here and meet with U.S. military and veterans?
It's a huge privilege, and it's not something that us athletes get to do every day. I think the outside eye, they don't turn their heads to the similarities that us athletes have with, soldiers and veterans. We both, all of us, we have to go through serious preparation to go do these, risky things every day. Us athletes, we're at risk of injury and head injury, whatever, impact injuries, and you guys are at risk of a lot more to a higher degree. And none of us are going out there with no preparation, putting our lives on the line for our country. So the preparation is very similar, and it's cool to connect with you guys and share our experiences with each other and learn from each other. And it means the world to be invited out here by Jesse and meet every one of you, because I know you guys have been through so much and have to persevere through so many different things. So have I, and we have a lot to learn from each other. And it's a huge honor. Can't wait to meet all of you after this talk.
All right, thanks, Lucas. Well, when we were at Park City together, we talked about this concept of resilient-based living, living life on the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, and the dangers and pitfalls, like I did, of just living life purely on the physical. Serving as an Army Ranger, as long as you did well on the PT test, and as long as you could run, as long as you could stay awake for extended periods of time, then you were considered fit. And we spoke about the importance of being fit across all 4 planes of those existence. And I was wondering if you could just touch on how that spoke to you, because you were one of the guys that came up to me afterwards and wanted to talk more about it, and it's ended up sparking a relationship that's now been going for 6 months.
Yeah, so as you were saying, living life on all 4 planes, the physical, the mental, emotional, and spiritual, those 4 planes all complement each other. And if you are missing one of them, then the other 3 are going to be pretty weak or not at the par of what they could be. So, the physical is obviously the starting point for an athlete. You know, you got to be able to get off the couch and turn off the TV and go outside and, you know, play basketball or get on the snow and snowboard. But as you start, you know, diving into these, you know, bigger contests or bigger situations where you are putting your life on the line, that's where the mental comes in. And then if you don't have the mental, you're probably not going to have the emotional to down. And then if you don't have the mental and emotional, then the spiritual connection that you have, you know, to the, you know, your higher self, as some would say, isn't really connected as well as it could be. So, you know, the mental feeds the physical feeds the mental, and those two right there equal the emotional. So all these situations that you guys are going through, all the situations that I go through, feed my emotions, and then they feed my spiritual, you know, side of my life. So they all complement each other, and as I said, if you are missing one, you're kind of, you know, burning a candle on both ends. So it's super important for me to stay aware of all four, and it's, you know, I assume it's very important for you guys to stay aware of all four planes: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, in order to, you know, serve to your highest potential and get through these life-risking situations that you guys go through each day.
All right, I don't know if I necessarily spoke to the rookies about it, but I know I've spoken to other members of U.S. Ski and Snowboard. This concept about failure, and I talk about that one of my biggest points of failure was not failing or allowing myself to fail or acknowledging failure up through my military career. I know you've dealt with that in a totally different perspective. I love the attitude at U.S. Ski and Snowboard of almost hurry up and fail, just get it done with, whether it's a workout, whether it's a crash on the half pipe or whatever, just get it done so you can move on. And I was wondering if you could talk about, you know, one or two of your failures in life and how you've used that to continue on and make yourself better.
I'd say the biggest failure that I had was kind of a couple different situations that built up into one big just kind of burst of emotion. I was 17 years old. This is a couple winters ago, and it was the best winter that I've ever had. You know, I was starting to win bigger contests, getting more recognition from the big snowboard magazines and the people making big videos, and I was getting to travel all over the country on my sponsor's dime, meet all these amazing pros. I was, you know, literally living the exact dream that I, you know, go through in my mind when I was a little kid. And I got very caught up in the glory and caught up in the whirlwind and the, you know, the game of being a pro snowboarder, that I forgot about what got me there in the first place. And I was unconsciously living each day, not realizing that I was, you know, more living off of my ego, and I was, you know, more attached to this glory, you know, not really knowing that I was turning my back on all these things that got me to where I was. You know, I was starting to not really value my diet as well as I used to when I was younger. I wasn't in the gym as much. I wasn't stretching my muscles out, and my muscles were getting all tight, and I was experiencing all these different pains. I was, you know, about to graduate high school. I did online school. Started dropping the ball in my school because I was so busy traveling, and I kind of just dropped the ball on all these other things that were going on in my life in the background. It'd be similar to if you guys were, you know, doing super well in the military and working your way up the ranks, but forgetting about your standard operational procedures. So, you know, that was a big moment in my life where I had to step back and realize what I was doing. And it took about 2 months, 2-3 months for me to, you know, reverse all that and come back to what got me to that point where I was living my dream, and, you know, remember what got me there. And I utilized that failure to my full advantage. And I learned so much through that phase. You know, early on I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, I'm not getting to go travel a bunch anymore, and I'm just sitting at home making up, you know, all my schoolwork that I wasn't doing, and my body hurts. But then I realized, I was like, all right, I can either sit here and pout about this situation, or I can get up, fix it, and learn, and learn, and learn, and learn. And that's what I did, and I went into that next winter, this past winter actually, a lot stronger, so much more knowledge, and all that knowledge was gained through a big failure. And I, you know, really appreciate every little failure that I've had in my career, because those moments of adversity, you know, those were the moments that got me to where I'm at now. Those are the moments that really taught me a lot about myself and how I'm going to get to the top. And yeah, that's the biggest thing that I could tell anybody is, when these failures come up, utilize them, because there's always something to learn in these little situations. Even if it's the smallest thing, if you learn one thing, it's a win.
Awesome, thanks, Lucas. So last night we were talking about the emotional plane of existence, and you know, the impression I think a lot of people have in the civilian world of us as the military or the Army is that we're just one big happy team, right? There's no competition across the ranks or any of that. And I was explaining to Lucas, in fact, the ski team actually, that was the first thing they asked me to do, was like, hey, give us a presentation on team building. You know, how do you keep the team together? And I explained to him, you know, in the task force that I got the honor of serving at Fort Bragg in, you know, there was 22 or 25 lieutenants. There were, you know, 5 captains, 4 of us that were commanders, and then there were 2 majors, the S3 and the XO, and then the task force commander, the lieutenant colonel/colonel. And so as a lieutenant, you know, I'm fighting essentially for, you know, those 3 to 5 spots as a captain. As a captain, I'm fighting with those 3 to 5 spots to the final 2 at major, and then the final 1 at colonel. And within, you know, U.S. ski and snowboard, even though he's on a team, when he competes, he's competing against not only his own teammates, but other athletes from other countries. And as far as the emotional plane of existence, I was curious if you could talk about your relationship with the teammates and how that feeds into your emotional maturity, strength, and well-being across the resilient-based living.
Yeah, so as Jesse was saying, we're all on a team, even though it's an individual sport. At the end of the day, we all are friends, even though we're out there to beat each other. I want to be on top, and I want my friends to be in second and third. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't work out like that. Sometimes my friend will end up on top, and I'll end up in 20th place with a broken snowboard and a sprained ankle. It happens like that sometimes, but the most important thing that I've learned through being on a team, being on the U.S. team, is friendship and teammates. You know, we all have the ability to either bring each other up to the next level, or we have the power to, you know, tear everybody down to the bottom. You know, so through this whole experience, I'm doing my best to stay aware of how I'm treating my teammates, how I'm speaking to them, the type of energy that I'm giving to them, because I know that, you know, if I'm in a pissy mood that day, if I'm cranky, you know, it could mess with them, and they could perform, you know, not as well as they could if I was super centered and still and supportive of them. And it happens sometimes where, you know, someone in the team is, you know, they're all bummed out and pissed off, and it definitely can affect the whole spirit of the team. So that's the best thing I can tell anyone, is be aware of how you treat everybody, because as we said earlier, you can either bring them to the top or you can tear each other down to the bottom. But yeah, snowboarding is an individual sport. It was founded upon, you know, breaking away from team sports, funny enough, but now we're all together, and I think it's a good thing to, you know, put us to the test and see how we do as a team. And it's super important for all you guys to be super supportive of, you know, everyone, because we all are human beings on this planet chasing a dream. Our dreams are different, but, you know, we all have the power in us to help that friend get to the next level.
So when we were at the VA, we were talking about, you know, the struggles that a lot of us have of why they don't come to the VA until it's too late, or, you know, later in life. And I made the analogy of, you know, that one of my biggest failures and mistakes looking back on it was the idea that, you know, serving within special operations is that no one else could help me. You know, if they didn't have a Ranger tab or hadn't served in the unit, they weren't capable of that. I've seen you personally, you know, you have mentors way outside of the snowboarding community, whether it's, you know, skiers, coaches, trainers that have nothing to do with what you do individual, and then obviously our relationship and the relationships that you're making with other people within the military and veterans as you go out. I was wondering if you could talk how that's augmented, because I know you talk a lot about the mentors and you give credit to them in your success so far.
Yeah, my mentors, you know, they are the most important thing for me in my career, because, you know, especially in snowboarding, it takes someone from within the industry to bring you in and kind of guide you to where you want to go. No champion was ever built completely self-made. You know, of course, we learn this material from our mentors, but it's up to us in the end to utilize everything that we learn. So I have several mentors that are completely, you know, detached from the snowboard world or the skateboarding world or all the other little sports that I'm into. And Bruce Lee once said that it's best to, you know, have 10 mentors and take just the value from each one of them and leave the negative stuff behind. So I've been doing my best to, you know, learn what I can from Jesse, and the stuff that I don't align with, I can leave that behind. But always take what you can from each person, even if it's the smallest little thing. It's so important to take value from each person, and obviously it's best to reciprocate in the end. So if someone gives you a great piece of knowledge, and they come up to you a month later and ask them, or they ask you, hey, can you help me with this? Obviously reciprocate in the end, I think, is the most important thing. But yeah, mentors are huge, and taking the value from each person and leaving the negative stuff behind, and not resenting them for giving you a lending hand that didn't work out in the end. That's important.
Excellent. So kind of continue on with the mental, emotional, and now going on the physical. Could you talk about how the physical ties in, particularly with the mental, with you in terms of your sport, in terms of using it, to push your mental edge, using your mental edge to push the physical side, and then also how that translates into like pushing your teammates in the gym, perhaps sliding over to the emotional level a little bit.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, the physical feeds the mental feeds the physical. You will never have the physical without the mental, and vice versa. So obviously it's easier to start with the physical, and as I said earlier again, the mental comes into play as you progress physically. The biggest struggle for me, and what I'm learning most about the physical mental crossover, is your mind is pretty much your motor, and it's what's going to give you the power to make these decisions to keep going with the physical. So whether it's for me, learning new tricks on the snow, like if I'm learning a new trick, that's super hard for me, but I know I'm so close, mind over matter type mentality. We've all heard that before, but it's all about self-awareness in the end, I think, and that's where the mental comes in, is being aware of what stuff is building you up and being aware of what stuff is tearing you down. So knowing when to slow down and also knowing when to speed up is super important. Being aware of all the things that could happen is crucial too. You got to account for certain situations to happen. You got to have some knowledge and preparation in case those situations happen. You never want to manifest negativity. However, you want to know how to deal with that negativity when it happens, and it all takes mental, emotional strength to get to that point where you can get the guts to deal with those negative situations. Like in the gym, for example, going to the gym, you're investing in yourself. You're putting money into your life piggy bank. So you want to be sure that you're actually in the gym, working out, bringing energy in, rather than putting your life bank in debt, burning energy out. And it's always important, as I said, to stay self-aware of what you're doing. Are you spending, or are you, putting money into your life piggy bank? Self-awareness is key for any dream that you ever want in your life. If you don't have the self-awareness, it's going to be really hard to get to that next level. Self-awareness is like the broth in the chicken noodle soup.
So we talked a little bit about the role of injury in the military world, and I was wounded 4 times overseas, and ended up having 4 surgeries, and after the 4th one, at 31 years old, they said, hey, congratulations, you're now a very young retired major. And obviously a lot of the people here in this room are dealing with that as well, in terms of transitioning onto life. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your bounce backs from injury, or maybe something you've seen from a key athlete that's provided motivation for you that could perhaps pass on some guidance for soldiers dealing with that.
So I recently had 2 ankle injuries this past winter, the same winter I made the U.S. team. The first one was some ligament and tendon strain, and as some of you may know, those take a while to heal, especially if they're really pulled. So I had a good month of not riding on snow, and it was really crappy because I was doing super well leading up to that. I competed in some of the test events or the qualifying events for the Olympics, and then that happened, and I was in a pretty dark place for a good week. And then I kind of had another little realization that, okay, I can either sit here and sit on the couch with my ankle up being iced and do nothing, or I can learn about, for example, why did this ankle injury happen? Let's figure out exactly what tendons I pulled, what ligaments I pulled, what ligaments those are attached to, or what muscles those are attached to, how I can avoid the injury next time. So I went through like a good 3-week phase of learning so much about how to keep the ankle stronger, how to stabilize the ankle, about what foods that I can put in my body to keep my ankle stronger. And that's just a small example. Obviously if it was a back injury, I'd want to look into other things like what muscles stabilize the low back. And the most important thing that, you know, I've told my friends when they get hurt is utilize that time to turn your head to the other things in life, because, you know, there's so much more to life than snowboarding for me. You know, it's a lot about building your character, building your legacy, and really figuring out, you know, your purpose on this planet. So you know, utilizing that time to really figure out why these negative situations are happening is a great way to spend your time while you're healing. You know, because not only do you heal up, but you also learn what you could do next time to prevent that injury. You know, it's really important to always, you know, while you're rehabilitating and while you're taking those, you know, the medicine to heal up, you're also figuring out why these things are happening to you. And then you come out of it smarter. I know I came out of it way smarter. I knew way more about my body. But I also was back on snow doing what I loved again. And that's the best thing that I could really think of, is utilizing these mistakes to your full advantage.
Yeah, one of the big things that's either talked about or absolutely not talked about within your community, both on the snowboard and the ski side, is the risk of injury. And I've related it to the athletes that have wanted to talk about it as, you know, the people in combat that are scared of getting shot or scared of getting killed, they're usually the ones that happens to, because there's this air of hesitancy that they do. And, you know, I've asked some of the speed guys, for example, on the U.S. speed team for skiing, and I asked them, how hard do you actually go because of that idea of, you know, wiping out and crashing? They're like, probably only about 70%. So I'm like, you're leaving 30% on the table because you're worried about this. And to me, in my mind, that's just an easy fix. Don't worry about it, do it, and your chances are lesser than you're going to get hurt in the first place. But for you, you've got a much different thing where you're up in the air upwards of 20 to 25 feet doing triple twists and flips and all sorts of other crazy stuff. I was wondering if you could talk about that from your perspective in terms of the fear of, you know, that big crash or getting hurt or your board snapping in half, your favorite board, or whatnot.
Yeah, so fear, as a lot of you know, it's an illusion. You know, it's always going to be there, but there's always things that we can do as humans to turn that fear into power. And that's something that I have to deal with every day. Something you guys have to deal with every day is, you know, the fear of being injured or losing a friend or watching your friends get brutally injured or, you know, you dying yourself. It's, you know, obviously a snowboarder, we fear different things than someone in the military would. But for me, the best thing that I do every day to prepare myself for those situations where I am in fear is I invest so much time into myself so that whenever those situations do come up, I know that I've done everything that I possibly can do to deal with that situation. You know, like a grandmother, an 85-year-old grandmother is not going to drop into a half pipe like I would, because they know that if they drop into the half pipe, you know, if they even can make it up the wall, they're probably going to break their legs. It's the same thing for a 19-year-old kid like me. I'm not going to try that double cork 1080 if I stayed up till 2 in the morning playing Fortnite, eating Cheetos, and woke up at, you know, 10 a.m. and try that trick at 11 a.m. You know, it's just, it's a foolish thing to do, to go into these big situations with no preparation. So I do everything that I can do to make sure that I, you know, fueled myself properly that day. You know, that means hydrating in the morning, eating the right foods that are actually making my body healthy, not, you know, having some label on the front that says all natural, thinking that it's healthy. You know, it's all about making sure your diet's up to par with, you know, the tricks that you're doing, making sure that my body feels rested each day, and making sure that my mind is, you know, bringing in good energy. If you spend all day watching negative things, then, you know, you're probably going to have kind of a negative night and a negative next day. So stay prepared. I know you guys know a lot about preparation. Obviously, that's the, you know, that's the key to going out and doing what you guys are doing. Same thing for us.
Lucas, why did I feel like you were really saying if a 38-year-old retired Ranger guy was ready to drop in a half pipe and you just switched it with an 85-year-old grandma? I don't know. I'm going to board with them for the first time here in a week, so we'll find out what happens. All right, as you've gotten to know me over the last 5 months, you know, and gotten the opportunity to integrate with other veterans and some military personnel, I know you talked about, you know, what you're looking forward to coming here for, but what similarities have you seen in terms of our two communities, particularly with U.S. Ski and Snowboard and the military and veterans?
Preparation is the first one. You guys all have to go through, you know, training camps before you actually, are going to serve for our country wherever it be. I don't know too much about veterans and military. Now that I'm seeing all of you guys and seeing how it works, I'm really interested to learn more about it. But I know you guys aren't, getting on board on this mission and immediately going and fighting for our country. You guys have to prepare physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually to go out there and protect our country, which I respect 150%. Everything you guys do is amazing. Same thing for a snowboard athlete. We got to go prepare in order to represent our country and get that gold medal at the Olympics. Without the preparation, it's not going to happen. The second one is perseverance. Every single day we have to battle with mental hurdles, physical hurdles, injury, fear of, getting hurt, fear of our friends getting hurt, fear of our friends dying, or fear of our friends, not fulfilling the mission that's standing right in front of us, or us not fulfilling the mission and letting our friends down. So we have to persevere through those things every day. Number 3 would be blocking out the fear of these risky, negative things, all kind of crashing down on us. I know all of us have that little bit of fear in the back of our minds. And the man on top is the one that's the best at blocking out that fear and really leaving it in the back of his brain rather than the front of his brain or in front of his eyes. And the biggest similarity is we're all out there doing it for, more than just us. We're out there serving the United States of America. You guys are protecting our country and making it so that we can still live in this beautiful country, free and protected from the dangers that are out there in this world. And you're fighting for everyone in America. And I'm out there competing for, of course, myself. I love snowboarding, but I'm out there doing it for the kids that are coming after me and the people that are, I hope I can inspire a basketball player or a kid that can, that wants to go to a good school. I hope anything that I do or any way that I prepare for these situations can help somebody. So I'm competing for more than just myself. I'm competing for the country, competing for any kid that, sees value in what I do. So.
Yeah, just a side note to add on to that so I don't forget it, but last night Lucas had the opportunity to FaceTime with General Robert Caslin, and I think about every brigade commander all the way to your division commander on this post has had that guy as a senior raider at some point. He just retired as a soup of West Point, and he asked Lucas the same question that he asked all the athletes because he serves on the military advisory board with me. He says, who's your customer, who's your client? And usually they'll say something of like, myself, my parents, my ski team, my sponsors, whatever, and he usually cuts them off about halfway through. And Lucas's response was generally like that. He's the first one that I've never seen him just cut off and Lucas is truly one of those athletes that understand that his client is the American people. That's who he's snowboarding for. And the fact that he can come out here and give back to the people that allow him to go out there and do it on the national or international stage has simply been amazing. And I don't think I would have been mature enough to say that at 19 years old. So something that's just pretty amazing. So the final question before we go into the Q&A, when I went and spoke with you guys, I talked about these 4 planes of existence are great, the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And I look at it like a 4-legged stool. And so each of those stools, they need to be equally strong in order to hold themselves up. But the problem is that, yes, will provide stability, especially to someone like me, but stability for a type A, high-performing individual is not always the best thing because stability leads to stagnation, stagnation leads to boredom. And what do guys like me do when we're bored? Break things or cause trouble, right, Sergeant Major? And so for me, it was adding that mindset component. And I know the big buzzwords are mindfulness, meditation, yoga, but I can tell you that what that's become for me, and I told these athletes, is that's the twine that's around those 4 legs that allows for growth. And Lucas is one of those athletes that, before I even said that, was putting that into practice. And Lucas, I was wondering if you could talk about how mindset, whether you call it mindfulness, meditation, yoga, or whatever, has played a role in your success, not only professionally, but also personally.
Intention is the biggest thing, that we have to start with before we go out and do what we do each day. Always remembering what the purpose is of, the mission that day or the competition that day in my case. If you don't have the intention clearly set, it's going to be really hard to perform, to the exact T that you really want to. So meditation and stillness and, really working on my spiritual journey has taught me to clearly find my intent and my purpose and my motivation behind doing what I do each day. And finding that stuff is what helps me work through the hard situations. I every day remind myself that I'm out there doing it for myself, but I'm also doing it for the American people. So I don't want to let down everyone that's watching us on TV and everyone that is inspired by us. So, and finding your intention is super important. You guys are defending our country. I'm sure you guys are thinking about that each day when you're in these difficult situations. So meditation and mindfulness really helps with that, and it also helps for me when my mind's just going crazy. There's times where it gets super busy. Of course, I love what I do. It's amazing, but there are times where it's a whirlwind of just craziness, and you just have to come back to this place where it's just you, and there's nothing else that can, come into your space. And, even sitting for 10, 15 minutes can change your day, it can change your week, and it'll really change the way that you interact with other people, the type of energy that you're putting out in this world. And I think that's super important, especially when you're doing risky situations, knowing your intent and having an escape from the craziness of life, because we all have those moments where you just can't handle it and your head's about to blow up.
Well, as we close up the official portion of this and we transition to the Q&A, so this is really a spot to give you guys about 30 to 45 seconds to think about any questions you might want to ask Lucas, or you're going to have to suffer through me asking more questions of Lucas. Your choice. Bottom line is, as a 38-year-old man, I can honestly say that Lucas has become one of my mentors, particularly on the emotional plane of existence. There's nothing more amazing than being able to be humbled to be asked to come speak to him and his team as rookies, and be able to share my story, share our story, more importantly, and then be able to bring him back here and meet, vets at the VA, come out here to Fort Carson and meet military people. And so, Lucas, I can't tell you how much you do for me personally, and how much you're doing, especially for all those vets. My phone is blowing up with text messages of people that are just saying thank you so much for bringing you by and wanting you to come back after this season's over, hopefully with some medals around your neck from World Cup events, X Games, the Dew Tour, etc. So we'll talk about at the end how you can follow Lucas and how you can reach out to him. It's amazing how open these athletes are to contacting with people. So we'll talk about how you can do that and how you can support him. He'll be racing the World Cups here the first week of December, and then another tournament up at Copper Mountain the 15th through the 18th of December, and then hopefully he'll be in the final U.S. World Cup event in Park City in February. Fingers crossed. So with that, if you've got any closing remarks, the official side, you can go ahead and do that, and we'll go into the Q&A from these great Americans.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate all your guys' time and for coming to this. It's a huge honor for me to be able to speak to people that are doing so much for our country, and a lot goes into what we do, and a lot of people don't really see, the background stuff, the backstory stuff. Like a really good movie, all the public eye really sees is the final product, but they don't know how much goes into that every day of making that movie. So I personally don't know what goes into being a veteran or a soldier defending our country. So I have tons of respect for you guys, and I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing for this country. And it's very inspirational for an athlete to speak to people and meet with all you guys that go through situations that most people on this planet never even dream of. You never even know that's aware or isn't aware of what could happen. So tons of respect, and thank you guys so much.
Excellent.